Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 9 to Side podcast, where we chat with super amazing and inspirational people who've pounded the pavement before and after their 9 to 5s to get their side hustles off the ground. After listening to the interviews with these amazing guests, you'll walk away with a refreshed pep in your step and a newfound motivation to make your side hustle a reality. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 19 of the 9 to Side podcast, or as my husband likes to refer to it as Season 2, Episode 5265. Ha ha ha. I might have overshot the number of episodes I do per season, but that is fine. That ship has sailed, alas. Here we are. It's Episode 19, and I am very excited about my next guest. Spoiler alert, I do know Chad from my job, and I've always thought he was incredible, so I'm very excited to have him on. And he comes from one of those professions. His past is a profession that you think of growing up, of like those, and I've had guests on who have these professions where it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a surgeon. And they have a very, very clear-cut career path. Like, you go to school, you do the work, and you become that person, right? And then I always think to myself that, like, if you go to see those kind of people, you're usually not in a great place in your life. Like, if you're going to see a surgeon, well, usually not that great. Probably not a good situation for you. And then if you are needing a lawyer, usually you've done something shady or somebody has done something shady to you. But neither here nor there. Both are incredibly amazing, very reputable careers to pursue. However, I think a lot of the people that I've spoken to, because it is such a direct career path that you're on, and you're so focused and you work so hard, kind of put your head down to get to that career, and you don't take any really turns like someone in my career that has had a million internships and various other things, that when you arrive there, sometimes you look up and you realize that maybe you aren't as fulfilled or as happy as you thought you would be, or maybe you didn't ever stop to think what actually makes you happy or fulfilled, or, really utilized any of like your creative personal skill set to kind of bring into that, lawyer job or whatever it might be. So, like I said, Chad is an incredible guy that I knew from work, and he has the skill set to begin with. He's just an amazing kind of mentor just naturally, and is no surprise that he took that and kind of created this full-time job now. And his business is called Chad Aboud Consulting. And so Chad's past, he was a former general counsel and law firm lawyer. And his whole passion is really all about helping lawyers. His focus is specifically with lawyers, but helping them uncover their natural traits and skills so they're more successful and they feel happier in their career. So he does that through his coaching and consulting. And like I said, he has such a natural skill set for this, and did it naturally when he was working by just mentoring people that he managed, or just, friends and employees on the side that he talked to and kind of helped coach through their careers. So it's just such a natural progression for him. And it's been amazing to hear his story and watch him get this off the ground. So without further ado, this is episode 19 with Chad Aboud of Chad Aboud Consulting. First, let's start with who you are. Tell us your name and where you're from.
So my name is Chad Aboud, and I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Okay. And tell us what your business is, and whether it's currently the name of your business and what it currently is, if it's a side hustle, if it's a full-time job now for you.
So my business is Chad Aboud Consulting. And the goal of it is, I've been in the legal industry for a long time, and all the different elements of it, big law and general counsel and implemented legal tech. And so I've seen how the ecosystem works together, but it's a little bit medieval still. There is just so much that can be done on building relationships and bringing people closer together and making it more fun. And so, I started this business to do consulting and coaching to lawyers and law firms and legal tech companies, because I see how many quick and free things that we can do that actually bring us together. The legal industry, we've convinced ourselves over a long period of time, because of the billable model and how complex a lot of the work is, that you have to do really, really heavy lifts in order to create value. So, I started this business because I wanted to bring that to this industry because I know how many lawyers are suffering out there.
I think that's great. And you were doing this. So real quick. So it was a side hustle. You started this, you were kind of doing it unofficially on the side while you're working full time, but now it's a full-time job for you. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I was doing it kind of in the last few months that I was in my general counsel life, it wasn't really like that official a business. I mean, I had registered kind of the business name, but I was really just sharing my thoughts with the industry on social. And then that turned into some presentations for law firms, as much because I just wanted to make the industry better.
Right.
And what I really saw from that, what was reflected back to me as I began to build that out in LinkedIn, which is my social preference, and in the presentations, there's a hunger for this. The industry has just been kept in a box for so long. And I just realized that not only does the industry need it, but I really care about it much more than probably I ever wanted to admit before. And so at the beginning of 2023 was when I officially launched it as my full-time business.
Okay. And tell us the name of it real quick.
So it's Chad Aboud Consulting.
Chad Aboud Consulting. Okay. So obviously it's specialized to the legal industry, right? You don't focus on anything else. You're specifically focused on lawyers. And that is because of your background, right?
Yeah. So that's like my outward message is definitely to the legal industry because that's where I'm from and that's what I know best. But already I'm having clients come in that aren't lawyers. And I think why that is because what I talk about a lot is really about how to create human connection with ourselves and with others. And so folks who aren't lawyers are saying, hey, I'm seeing your videos on LinkedIn and I know you're talking about lawyers, but that made sense to me too. Do you help XYZ industry too? And the answer is yes. It's just that I focus my messaging towards the legal industry because that's kind of where I've historically come from, but it applies equally to anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, side note to everybody listening, I worked with you and I feel like your messaging applies across anyone. You don't have to be a lawyer. I'm definitely not in the legal industry, but I feel like you have great messages for how to connect with people, how to work in an industry. You're an amazing mentor. So I think that goes across any industry, not just lawyers. But I want to hear a little bit about your background. And then I want to talk about how you built this business, because I think you touched on a little bit starting on LinkedIn and doing videos, and you were getting asked to do some speaking engagements. And I really want to talk about how that kind of formed into a more formal business. But real quick, tell us about your background. I know you said you're a failed child actor, which I think is hilarious, but you were a child actor. So just give us a quick background on who you are and how you kind of came to be in this.
Yeah, for sure. So I think maybe why I even got excited about this business is because when I was a kid, I was a competitive athlete. Soccer was my sport of choice and I played it all through college. But actually, I was also a bit of an arts kid growing up. I was a bit of a drama kid and I didn't really know it. It wasn't formalized for me in the same way that sports were, but I was in every play that the school would put on. I think I didn't really pursue that because I came from a really sports heavy family and that's what I know. And that was formalized in my life. And this was just kind of on the side, but I was good at sports. Right. Soccer in particular, I was good at that. And while it was a passion for me, there's lots of other things too that every human has within them that aren't fully tapped into because we haven't really been trained how to really be curious about other humans. And so I spent the first part of my career in a national law firm in Toronto helping public companies buy and sell each other and raise money. And I really appreciated the training, but I didn't really find it that engaging for my nature. And this was a little bit weird because I had done the thing. Why did you pick law?
Why did you pick law? That's why I'm always curious, knowing your background and being athletic, what made you just even choose that track and not something else to begin with? Why law?
Matlock and Columbo. I just watched these shows as a kid and I was like, how do they do this? Just pulling it off at every turn, finding the criminal and making them admitted on the stand and having the hot dog and the cigar. And I think it was just a very logical route that people thought, okay, you could probably do that and be good at that and let's do it. And it makes sense. And I think a lot of my life, it's very thematic of a lot of my life that I was doing things that seemed to make good sense. But it's funny, even in law school, I didn't like it. And so I ended up doing this joint program with the business school because I was like, oh, that makes more sense to me. You work in groups and talk and meet people and do presentations. And it just made way more sense to me. But I had already joined the law school. So I just ended up doing both of those tracks, but I actually didn't like law school at all.
But you still kept going down that path. Like, was there ever a thought in your head where you're like, maybe I made a wrong decision? Like, did you have side hustles or other interests on the side all the time, kind of fostering the other interests, like just to keep your soul feeling good while you were doing something that wasn't fully fulfilling, I guess, to you?
Well, in my first year of law school, before I started the joint program at the business school, I already was so bored that during the class, and maybe this was reflected in my first semester's grades, I tried to start this business. So this would have been like 2006. I tried to start this online business to help Canadian kids get scholarships in the US, because it was like so hard to get athletic scholarships back in the day. And there was no like online portal and stuff. And so I was trying to create it in class. I didn't really think to myself, should I stop this? I was going to law school. I was going to be a lawyer, but I was like, how do I augment this to like make it more enjoyable for me? And in Canada, unlike the US, we still have this thing where you have to do a year of like basically being a student apprentice in a law firm after you graduate from law school in order to be a lawyer. You actually have to do this 1 year like pre-training thing. And so then you get in the path, and then you're in the path and you're learning and you're making money, and it gets harder and harder to leave.
So question for you, obviously, fast forward, you had a job in a law firm, right? And that, are you looking around and making any observations early on, like way prior to starting this consulting business in that particular area? Did you come across a lot of people where you thought to yourself, like, wow, this is really missing from this industry, like early on? Did you have any inklings of that before you started this?
100%. I didn't know what I was going to do about it, but I saw two problems early. And it was like maybe the biggest benefit, but also the biggest curse to me being in a law firm at that time. One, I really liked training younger lawyers. And so from like the first year that I was even a lawyer, I was like getting on the student committee that like hires the next round of students, because I really like training them. And I think it's because I think legal training is so disparate. It really depends on the human that teaches you. And it's not always very human centric, and it's, extremely technical. And that's not that engaging for most people. And so I loved doing that. But what I found out was, for a lot of more senior lawyers, my training of other lawyers, which was the entire asset of the firm, they only liked that if it got 0% in the way of the work. And the second thing was, so I'm doing these like M&A deals or like raising money for companies and these really complex deal structures. And after I'd done them for a couple of years, I would say like, okay, but these 5 pieces that take like 20% of the effort, they're pretty much useless. They don't really add anything. And I know it's customary that we've done it for a long time, but they take a lot of effort, very little value. How about this? Let's not do them anymore. Rely on these other things that achieve the same goal that we already have to do. Charge the same amount of money if we want, just make better margin, because the client doesn't care. The client doesn't even know we're doing these things. They just want the results. So give them the same great result, make more margin, do less garbage work. And so those two things always stayed with me. But, so I still did it for 5 years, but those two things never left. And it was a 24/7, 365, pretty intense, specific area I also chose to work in too. And, one morning, my partner says to me, like, what if we just like traveled around the world one day together? And 3 days later, I go to her, I'm like, okay, so about your idea, let's do this thing. And she didn't even remember, because it was just a joke. And so within 3 weeks of her making that joke in the middle of the night, we had resigned, packed up our condo, put it in a storage locker, and we're on a plane to Barcelona for like 6 months around the world without a plan when we came back.
Incredible. So 1, why did you come back? And 2, when you came back after being refreshed and enlightened from traveling around the world, where did you go? And you came back to doing the corporate world again, but you were not at a law firm. You decided to come back and get a full-time gig.
Yeah. So we did 6 months. I think it was like 5 continents, and professionally, this was our big takeaway. Like, what you think and value, a lot of that is just circumstantial to like where you grew up. There's no universal truth, right? How you want to spend your time and money and energy. This is just the city, the family, the community that you happen to arrive in. And so you start to see like people just value things differently based on their own experience. And so we started to try to pick out different things to be like, could we bring that back? Could we bring that back? Would we trade something from our existence to have that mindset? And so like that was really, really valuable, I think, because business is so international too, right? Like, we work together international company, people are working around the world, like they all come with their own value proposition about time, energy, money. And if you don't have to think like them, but you have to have an open mind to understand where they're coming from, not only just because it's nicer, but it's because it gets more out of people.
Right. It's hard to, like, if you travel, I don't think there's a lot of people who are fortunate enough it's amazing if you get the chance. I've had a couple friends to, leave and travel for that long a time. And I think it really helps you see things in a different perspective. I think when you do have to come back and get a job and try to hold on to those things in the day to day of like the corporate world, which is difficult to change. I think it becomes difficult, which is like why I'm interested. So when you came back, I don't know if like your travels or anything like that maybe influenced like the duration of how long you decided to stay in this last corporate job before you left to start this business. You were starting to do stuff on the side in your last job. When you came back, you got another job, but not at a law firm, right? You got a job at a
I went into industry, like Canada's version of like Barnes and Noble. And it's like actually in the US too, called Indigo. And so it's like a big kind of like lifestyle, homewares, and then half of it is all about literacy and books. And I wanted to see my work impacted in real life. Like you could go to the stores. And you could see the customer experience and you could see kids getting the benefit of like the literacy programs. And like, so yes, that travel did have an impact in that decision because I was like, I'm going to trade money for time, for my own energy, for the impact in the community, for the curiosity and broader experience. And so that was definitely there. And I did that for 3 years, learned how to be an in-house lawyer and had a, great legal team to learn from. But again, like I didn't really care enough about being a lawyer every day. I kept wanting to move closer to the business. And so I was like, okay, how can I do this? And so 2018, 2019, I had enough experience being in-house. And I was like, I want to build my own function because I feel like if I do that, I can build it with the brand and the message and the relationships that matter most to me.
Did you feel all that time? Like what changed? Like what was some of the things while you were at Audience View that you were decided to really focus in on this consulting business? Like what was the switch and like what are some of the things that you did first to get it going? I want to talk about how you built that up from just a side business that you were doing things on LinkedIn to what it is today.
Yeah. So I think, when you're heavily influencing a function, and if you care a lot about the relationships and the brand of that function, you think about it a lot because there's a lot of ways to do work. For me, I'm not so obsessed with legal work. So I'm always trying to think about like, okay, how can we do this fastest, most efficient in the way that other people like? Because I have a persona where I don't like to be pushed and pulled around. I really don't like that. And I don't like to do that with other people. I really like kind of a self-sustaining, like symbiotic relationship. It's like very core to my nature. And so that really drove the way I'd want to work with different teams. I wanted them to work with me because they wanted to. I said to myself, well, I can't have these conversations in real life anymore. Where am I going to have them? And so I just started dumping them on LinkedIn. It was the only social platform I had. So I knew how it worked. And I was like, I'm just going to dump it there. And this was like the thing that started my thinking that it could be something. I received a reaction I never received before. This is passionate. This is creative. This is refreshing. I had never heard that in my life. It just kept spiraling on itself and, spiraling in a positive way. And it just turned into like lots of podcasts, lots of speaking opportunities. And I realized like there's something here. And that was like the journey that was really going on in my mind where I was like, there could be a real thing here.
And were you doing it on the side? Just you're like, I'm really passionate about it. You're doing it for no money. Were you thinking like immediately the second you started getting asked to do speaking engagements, did you think to yourself, like, how am I going to monetize this? Did you sit down and start to create some kind of business plan? What were the steps that you were thinking in your head about, like, how am I going to change this into, more than just this? Or was it just something you really enjoyed doing and you didn't think much beyond that?
I knew that people did get paid to do it, but I didn't even care enough about asking for the money. I just wanted to do it because I felt very compelled and I liked that feeling and I wanted to get that out as much as possible. And I think that was really important to like the success of like the financial success of the business that came later, because I wasn't doing it with an expectation of return.
Right. You were just,
I was doing it because it mattered to me.
Right.
And people felt that. They're almost even confused why I wasn't asking them to pay me.
Right. Do you feel like this is something missing? Because again, from the very beginning, it was specifically focused on the legal industry, lawyers, you're speaking directly to lawyers. Mm-hmm. Is there anybody like that? I mean, there's obviously you've talked about like the legal industry and there not being enough of this. I mean, in other industries, people focus on this kind of stuff, team building and engaging with people and all that. Did you focus on this because you feel like they don't do that at all in the legal industry? Are they a little bit hesitant to invest in people? Is it like a push to kind of get them to make that investment?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's much less of it in the legal industry than in other industries. And it's because there's still a reticence to wanting it. So the supply side doesn't show up because they don't see it on the demand side. I think what I saw is I hope that there's as many other people doing it in their way as possible, but I never really saw it as a competition anymore about like, oh, there's a lot of people or not. Or I just thought to myself, you clearly have a passion and a message here. Whatever you do that's not pure legal work immediately takes you to the front of the line. And that's pretty incredible for a historic industry. So you choose to make these small changes in your life, you immediately go to the front of the line. That's pretty cool. And so I want to give that opportunity to as many people that are as open to receiving it as possible.
How do you show, return on their investment? Like, what do you guarantee? And how did you also build that in as once you realized that you were going to kind of turn this into more of a business and formalize it? How do you charge for your offerings and show return on that?
I think it's more difficult when you're kind of selling more of a qualitative thing. Mm-hmm. And so what I try to show people is really like through my LinkedIn posts is about like two things. One is you feel like this, but it's quite easy to feel like this. And I'm not even saying you got to leave your job. I'm saying like if you did this thing or started thinking about it like this, you could feel like that. And so you don't got to leave your job. You don't have to have any opportunity cost there, but you can feel a lot happier. And you can have a lot more success in like getting your clients. And now I'm not going to tell you you're going to get like 5 more clients next week, because for me, the value proposition is as much how you feel about the impact you are leaving in your career.
And have you come up with your own sort of worksheet or workflow or plan? Like, do you have any kind of, like for people listening, if anybody wanted to do something similar like you, did you have to go get any kind of certification for coaching to help you formalize some of your ideas into, plans for people if they come on board with you? How did that work?
Yeah. So I think like on the coaching side of it, there's people who get certifications from like coaching academies, people who don't. I think for me, there's kind of the way that I thought about certifications is there's 2 purposes. One is like substantive coaching training. And the other is if you think it makes you more credible to your client base. And so I didn't see it from that perspective that was like a gated requirement in order for me to launch this business. Right. And then on the accreditation side, I mean, my credibility is I've been in big law. I've been a general counsel. I've built the functions. I've been on the sell side, the buy side. I've implemented the technology. So combine that with like my nature for training people, like this is the credibility. Like I think of it as in 3 buckets. So the first is, I get a lot of people who are like, oh, can you help me with like these business decisions? And can you help me with these like very specific outputs? I tell them, I was like, sure, I could. But this is what I'd rather do. I'd rather create the hub of the wheel. That's you. So that like, you don't need me forever to help you make these one-off decisions. I want to give you the inputs. And so the way that I do that is the first third of the program is like uncovering the natural traits and skills that are within you. Because once you know kind of who you are and what you really care about, it really decreases the noise. Right. And if you don't know where your natural abilities are. So the first part is like uncovering that. Then the second part is like, okay, now we've got to create some confidence around that. And so we're going to take these things that we think you really care about and we think you're naturally energized by, and we're going to test them quickly and for no cost in the market. How can you create this conversation? How can you offer this one thing very, very quickly to see if when it comes out of your mouth, it still feels right? And so then you test them. That's kind of like the middle part. And then we say like, okay, how can we bake these things into your life so that you don't even think about doing it, but they're naturally a part of you? So like my example would be my branding and marketing is pretty much all LinkedIn. So I need to do that pretty much every day. And I need to have the inspiration and thoughts in order to post that much content every day. Okay. So when will you do it? How do you not get distracted? And how do you have the inspiration? And so I went through the work of figuring out, okay, what inspires me? What am I naturally drawn to? How am I going to conjure up ideas in like a process? How am I going to capture them? How am I going to refine them? And how am I going to create the time in my life in order to get them out? So when I set up my own business, Calendly only starts at 10:30 because between 8:30 and 10:30 is like being with our daughter, taking her to school, listening to podcasts, exercising while listening to the podcast, capturing all those ideas, refining them, getting them out. All of that happens before I start any of like the client work of the day.
Right.
And so like, that's kind of a mini example of like how I kind of uncover it, tested it, and then bake it into my life so that I don't even think about it as a challenge. It's just the way that I am.
Right. And how long do you, when you work with a client, so you do individual consulting, but you also offer like team consulting, you go into companies, how long do you work with individuals for? What's the usual, can it be any time or is it like 3 to 6 months? Like what's the typical time frame you work with clients for?
Yeah. So, like some of it might depend on what exactly they think they want to achieve. But what I think is, and I know this from sports and like personal work, is that like, you're not going to fix it tomorrow. But it also doesn't need to take like 3 years. Like I think, that time frame of, 3 to 6 months when you meet once a week or once every other week, you will gain enough traction that you can uncover some stuff, test it, and then bake it into your life. And then whether you want to like double down on that afterwards, but I think that gives you enough time. So with individuals, typically what I do is like 12 sessions. Whenever you want to use them over the course of 6 months, I recommend once a week or once every other week. You can book them whenever you want. And if you don't want to use all of them, also up to you. Like, I don't think about it as you must use all 12 sessions because magic happens at session 12. No, it's like, you want this result, we're going to get you there. If it happens in session 3 and you don't want to do anymore, cool.
Very cool. And how have you gotten most of your clients? Have you invested any money in advertising or marketing? I know you talked like LinkedIn is your primary, social area where you promote and do videos, but have you put any effort into any other areas to get clients or other?
Yeah. I mean, it's not for a lack of trying by the lead gen companies in my DMs. Like they're in there letting me know about the 1,000 qualified leads I'm going to get every single day. And credit to them, for they're doing what they do. For me, no, it's pure organic from LinkedIn and my network. And I don't really want to be pushing boulders up hills everywhere in the cold DMs. I just don't like it. It's not for me. And so what I want is I want to share knowledge, lift other people. And the folks that resonates with, that's just inbound.
Right. No, I think that's really smart. I mean, and the way that you've built it too, the fact that it's so, you're so passionate about it. It's what you naturally do. But people do always ask about the money, right? People have side hustles. So I want to ask you, you have a full-time job and you've got something like this and you want to transition. Did you have enough money? Did you wait until you were making enough money in this consulting business to actually give notice and leave your full-time job? Or did you take the leap and just decide to leave and see what happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think when people do this decision, they see it very like black and white, either like, oh, I'm going to build it over time or I'm just going to cut it. The way that I see is that like if you made a bunch of money in like the corporate world and if you saved it and invested it responsibly, then because for me, I've left jobs twice, the law firm and in my latest job without the next plan and without that money waiting for me. Right. But the way that I saw it is the money that I made was also kind of like a salary while I was off. Because I didn't live paycheck to paycheck. And so I saw that money not as like, oh, I've saved it and now I'm just depleting it. It's like, no, I made that money so that I could also almost pay myself in the time that I was off to build something else. So I didn't see it as like no income when I left. I was like, no, I'm just using savings is basically money for later, right? You either like spend now or spend later. And so I looked at my savings as like, okay, now I'm spending that money that I put in the spend later account. That's what the savings account is called. And so I made sure throughout my life, not just in the moment I wanted to leave, but throughout my life that I was saving the amount of money that would create opportunity for me throughout my life, not just when I retired. And so in both circumstances, I was like, okay, how long do I think I want to travel for? 6 months. Okay. What do flights cost between cities to travel for 6 months? How many are we going to take? What's an Airbnb cost per night? Okay, back of the envelope, this amount of money. Look at my savings. Can I afford that, assuming that I get a job within 3 months of coming back? Yeah, no problem. This one has a little bit less certainty to it because it's not like I'm joining a company where I can earmark the salary. It's like I'm building it, right? So this time what I did is I said like, okay, I look at like the portfolio of assets that I have, like what is the liquid value that's available to me that doesn't make me nervous about future. And so I said, okay, it's that amount of money. Okay, what's my spend per month without drastically changing my lifestyle? It's this. What's my runway? Is it enough runway that I can build this business in a way that I want to build it? And if the answer is yes, which it was for me, then I was like, great. Then that money that I saved isn't meant for when I'm 68.
Right.
That money's meant to build a life that's meaningful to me every day starting now. And so I used it as the employment money now. I'm debiting my own account every 2 weeks.
So smart. I feel like you should be a financial / life coach consultant for people that want to leave. Do you ever talk to lawyers and then they're like, great, thank you so much. I'm quitting my job tomorrow. Like, thank you. I've discovered a lot about myself, and I realize I also do not like practicing law, and I'm leaving. Like, do you feel like that sometimes they uncover things where they're like, I'm in this profession, never wanted to be. It's not my true passion.
Yeah,
and
I mean, I think it's a full mix.
There.
A lot of lawyers go into the industry without a purpose, right? Like maybe they're like me and watch Matlock, or maybe they had lawyers in their family. Who knows? It's not always a lot of thinking that goes into it. Some people there are, but some there aren't. And what I see is like 3 options. One is you find small, easy ways to make your life way happier where you are. Beautiful. Second is you're like, I still like the law, but I realize this environment, because there's like 2 pieces, right? There's your environment and your personal growth. And if you realize that your environment isn't conducive to who you are, then you're like, well, I still like the thing. I just don't like it here. Great. Right. Then you shift into like another firm or another company. And then the third one is like, maybe I don't like this at all, but I have all this training and education and maybe I use it for something else. And to me, it doesn't matter which one it is that you choose, as long as it's something that's meaningful to you. Yeah. Because I think if you're doing something that's meaningful, I think of it like total success. Like it's not just about money, right? Like the legacy that you leave is the way you made people feel.
So, kind of in wrapping up this conversation, I want to ask you, what do you see in the next couple of years for your business? Like, where do you want to take it? What do you see happening?
Yeah. So I think 2023's goal is, if I can cover my life's costs, which I think I can, then that's a victory, because then, like I have some sort of proof point that financially as one lever in this business, it's viable. Mm-hmm. I think I can do that. And so that's comforting, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to do it forever, right? Like it's also got to be meaningful and impactful to me. And if I tested it and it didn't work and I should do something else, I'll do something else. So what I really want out of this is if I can cover my costs, beautiful. The other big thing about the business is if I can find the overlap between what I most like to do, the client segment that wants that thing, and that can pay the right price point for that thing, that's a huge win. I think that's the biggest win for any business. What you want to offer, identify who actually needs it and who wants to pay you the right price for it. If you can figure that out, then you can be as financially successful.
I think you're really great about thinking about the money covering your costs and seeing where you're at. And then, I think it's really smart to look at things like that. And then deciding whether, the overlap of whether the market, finding somebody who pays enough for that and wants that business. And that might be, maybe you shift too. Maybe it is, you find more people, maybe it's not the legal industry, but I think, right. Giving yourself the year to discover it, I think that makes a lot of sense. And obviously I think you're the kind of person too, that's not going to do something that isn't, fulfilling to you. So
I appreciate that. I mean, I think for people who are like trying to get this thing off the ground, I would say is like, look at your costs as much as what you think the prediction of the revenue is. And if you're in a tax jurisdiction that's like Canada, I know some US states are, where it's like, you got to make twice as much money for every dollar of cost, is like, what are the luxury, not even luxury, but what are the things that you spend money on that you don't actually need to spend money on? You might spend money on them because you're unhappy in some element of your career. Well, if you're happier in your career, you wouldn't spend all this like convenience money. Well, if you don't spend all that convenience money, you don't have to make twice that amount in the income. So all of a sudden the math changes. You don't have to make the same amount you're making today. You're actually not trying to take 3 $20,000 trips with your family a year to make up for your life unhappiness, because you're happier every day. So you get to be happier every day. You don't have to spend $60,000 in costs on trips. You could do something that's like much more financially manageable while you build this business. And people might like you more for it because you're happier every day. And so I don't want people to get so obsessed with like top line. Mm-hmm. I think of it as like bottom line and like your life's happiness with that bottom line number.
I think that's a great tip. I was going to ask you in closing too, like your tips for anybody starting a side hustle, but I feel like you're full of great tips and advice along the way. And I think reframing how you think, I think you just said a lot of things that make a lot of sense. And I don't think, people stop to think about things in a certain way. People are very focused also on like financial stuff. And I think you sort of like reverse the way you think about that. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So thank you so much for being on, Chad. I really appreciate it. And just lastly, just tell us where we can find you, the name of your business, all the places you are, LinkedIn, the website. Go ahead, tell us where we can find you. Yeah.
Well, the good thing is it kept it pretty simple. So Chad Aboud Consulting, chadaboud.com, and Chad Aboud on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the easiest way. I mean, I've got some TikToks out there, but I don't even really know how to use TikTok yet. I just thought it was like an amazing software editing tool, video editing tool. So, well, and thank you for doing this. Like you're meant to do this and, you're meant to like bring people's voices together. You've got the energy for it. You've got the passion for it. And you're allowing people to have like a way to share their story that they wouldn't otherwise have. And like, that's meaningful, right? So I hope that you see that. Well, you're so great. Well, you're the whole reason I started the podcast and kept it going. So whenever I think of quitting, I'm like, oh no, Chad told me to do it. I was like, damn, Chad. But seriously, I'll let you go because I know I have a call at 1:45 too. But Lorena and I were just saying, like, you're such a unicorn. Like I know whatever you do, like your energy is just, which is why I connected with you so much. Like we were saying, it just like, it's just different than anybody else. Like you were never meant to be in a corporate box, especially not the box that we were in. And I think that people who are like you, who could connect like so intelligently to other people can really do anything, because I truly believe that's like the secret to everything. I mean, that it doesn't matter, where you place that, you're going to be successful. So thank you so much. All right, Chad, take care. Talk to you later. Bye.